How's it going, Paulie?
Howdy.
So, do you want to get started?
Yeah.
Alright,
Wherever you want to start.
let's start off with simple stuff. What caused you to get into Yu-Gi-Oh? Where did the journey begin?
So, when I was... How old are you right now?
11.
11. Okay, so I was 1 year younger than you. When I was 10, in 2006, my dad used to play too. My dad found a locals that was, like, kind of nearby where we live. I used to, like, collect cards when I was really in the early 2000s. We all in school kind of would, like, watch the show, and Yu-Gi-Oh was, like, really big during that period of time. So I used to, like, have the cards, but I didn't really know how to play properly. And then we found our first locals, and that was kind of how it started. And that locals used to hold regionals as well. So I actually went to my first regionals in 2006 also. And then, yeah, I just kept playing from there. As I got older, I started going to big events and all the other stuff.
Having started around age 10 in 2006, I have assumed you had played some Dragon Ball in your day. Looking at the game now versus then, what do you think might have been the most drastic and unique changes to both the game and the competitive landscape?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. What was the biggest change? There's been so many. Probably, I mean, one of the Tier 0 formats. Either Teledad was, like, at the time, the first, like, really, like, insane Tier 0 format where you had this one deck that, like, you almost had to play. That was in 2008 when Phantom Darkness came out, and then the Duelist Genesis introduced Synchro Monsters. Teledad was the name for, like, the Dark Arm Synchro combo deck at the time. That was a big change, but I'd probably have to say Dragon Ball was 2013. It had such a higher ceiling than, like, everything else that had came before it in the game. It was just like playing a different game almost. It was like sort of like the first taste of, like, modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That was like 2013. Biggest change as far as, like, not in terms of, like, the actual gameplay of, like, the meta, but just in terms of, like, overall. Probably when Konami took over the game from Upper Deck in early 2009, there was a big change in, like, kind of management of the game and who ran organized play. Ever since then, I think Konami's done, like, a really good job of growing the game. Because back before that, like in pre-2008, even, like, SJCs, which is what YCSs used to be called, basically YCSs, only used to get, like, a couple hundred people. Like 200 to 300 was very common for basically a YCS. And, you know, nowadays we have, like, 2,000 people at YCSs. Yeah, so just seeing the game. So I've been there from the beginning and watched the game kind of grow over the years. So it's been cool. You mentioned Dragon Duels. That was another thing that got introduced after Konami took over from Upper Deck in 2009. We didn't actually have Dragon Duels when I first started playing the game.
Wow.
So I had to play with the big boys when I was little.
You had to play with the pros.
Yeah. And the year they introduced Dragon Duel was the year that I turned 13. So it was like I never really got to play in Dragon Duel. That's okay. I think that 1 year, 2009, I was eligible for it, but I chose to play in the main event instead because I wanted to put myself on hard mode because I'm silly.
So you received your first major win in the second remote duel YCS of 2022. After that, you began traveling extensively for more events and competing at the highest possible levels. What about that first win pushed you to more strongly focus on the competitive scene, and was there any sort of impact to your day job or lifestyle?
One thing for me personally, before COVID, I was never really able to travel as much as I would have liked. Partly because of health issues, and partly just mainly that.
It was coronavirus.
What was that?
It was coronavirus.
No, that was before, like, my own health issues, but before COVID, I would only go to, like, maybe 1 or 2 big events per year, usually just, like, the WCQ and, like, maybe one other YCS. When COVID happened, and remote duels got big, I was, like, finally able to, like, compete, basically. That event was actually my first YCS top, the one that I won. So I got my first YCS top and first YCS win on the same event. It was the last remote duel YCS. At that point, I was like, all right, and I just had a big win. I was feeling really confident, and I was like, I'm going all in. And I traveled to, like, as many events as I could pretty much, like, the past 2 years.
Speaking of lifestyle, what other interests or hobbies do you have outside of Yu-Gi-Oh? Are there any particular shows, activities, or anime do you enjoy?
Yu-Gi-Oh is, like, the only game I really play, actually. To really be able to compete at the highest level at anything, I think you have to just give that one thing your all. I do like movies a lot. But I find TV shows are always too much of, like, a time investment. Because you start watching and it's like, oh, now I want to watch the whole thing. And then a week later, you're like, oh, I just used up all my free time. But as far as what other hobbies I do really like, though, I really like music, making music, listening to all genres of music. and which is good because that's something you can do while playing YuGiOh, listening to music. So that's how I probably do that.
Testing circles are always very important. I remember you mentioning in your interview with Tombox having a good testing circle of friends has helped you to get you where you are. What do you feel like are the biggest benefits of having that circle, and what challenges do you think it can present?
For me personally, it's always kind of been like, I've always been very fortunate to have like one friend who I just tested really hard with and who just really helped me get ready for an event. At different times for different events, it's been different friends. Usually either my friend Brad or my friend Hani. Those are two of my, like, they've been some of the biggest helps for me for different events. But yeah, definitely like having people around you who like support you and who are themselves really like skillful and knowledgeable is like huge. I think it can be done on your own, but it's very hard to do it on your own to like really do well with it, just by yourself. So definitely yeah, just having good people around you is huge.
There are a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players out there. Some are positive, some are negative, and some are just apathetic. A standout thing about you is you always seem to be extremely positive in any situation, no matter who you're with. What advice would you give to others to stay positive in both Yu-Gi-Oh and in life in general?
Personally, I've always tried to advocate for like good sportsmanship in the game. Like just being like respectful and positive, but mainly just respectful and like having good sportsmanship to the other players. I think it's not to say like we all get upset sometimes when we lose, right? So it's not that I don't sometimes feel pretty disappointed or upset maybe over a loss. It's just that there's no reason to take that out on your opponent or to even like you don't want to. I don't want to make my opponent feel bad. So I always try to have good sportsmanship, always shake the opponent's hand and smile. And I'm happy for them too. They won. I lost. Sometimes it goes that way. And as far as life in general, it's kind of the same concept. When things don't always go your way, or something disappointing happens, or that you're upset about, or something bad happens in general, you just got to look at it as sometimes bad things are going to happen. It is what it is, and you just immediately start strategizing or thinking through like, all right, what's the solution? What's the next step? What can I do to come back and move forward? And yeah, I always just start thinking about like, all right, like what's plan B? Like if it's a loss in a tournament, you're just like, all right, it's just one loss. You got to go on to the next one. If it's your last loss of the tournament, you're like, all right, what can I learn from this weekend? What did I do wrong? What did I not expect maybe? And you just start focusing on the next tournament and just don't think about the loss.
Having played since 2006, you've seen a lot of formats. What historic format has been the most positive memories for you, and what deck were you on at the time? What would you say are the biggest highlights of that time?
That's a tough one. I've enjoyed so many formats. It's hard to really pick one or a couple, but I tend to enjoy any like tier 0 formats where there's like one dominant best deck and it's just, a lot of really just mirror matches, and because there's so much you can do when you know what, like, you have a really good idea of what deck you're going to be facing, or when it's especially just mirror matches inherently 50-50. So any little things you can do with like your build or with just outplaying the opponent can make such a difference. And they're just challenging. I just love mirror matches. So any like one deck dominant format I usually enjoy. I think Terra Element was the most skillful format in the history of the game. By far. I think Terra Element was the most skillful format. Like when it was at full power, it was all mirrors, kind of like I just said, just Terra mirror matches. So I really liked that format. I think most competitive players, there's a consensus that was one of the most skillful formats and one of the favorites for most competitive players.
Yeah, that's the only tier 0 format I've ever played in was Tier Element.
And those were the best ones. So that was good.
From the 60-card Adventure DPE deck to the Dragon Link deck from Worlds, you've played a lot of great meta decks in your professional career. What has been your favorite? Why?
I really liked Zodiac a lot. I think that was really good. Yeah, Zodiac, Terra Element, Striker, Domain Monarch. Those were some of my favorites. Even though I won with Kashtira and in the base adventure combo deck, we called it BASE was the acronym we called it for short. I wouldn't say those were my favorite. Kashtira certainly was not one of my favorites. Dragon was fun, but probably not one of my favorites either. I just thought it was a good choice for Worlds, and I put a lot of time in with it. The Adventure Pile deck maybe I could say was one, just because that was something that like I I didn't build it from scratch myself. Gabriel Netz was actually the player who kind of innovated the original adventure pile deck, and then my friend Brad found it and kind of refined it, and then I refined it some more. So we kind of worked on it together. But that felt like something that like I kind of created. Whereas Kashira and Dragon were more kind of just like standard things that already were kind of somewhat solved. I just kind of like made meta calls regarding the tech choices for those events that I won.
What decks are going to be most viewed and what decks are going to be less viewed but still could pop up?
Exactly. I kind of view the ban list as just like, it's just about rotation. It's just about making sure like something hasn't been like just is like dealt with after the appropriate amount of time. It's like people always like, oh, this like as soon as a new deck comes out that's like really good, everyone's like, oh, it needs to be hit. This needs to hit this, but it's like unless something's extremely uniquely unhealthy or like problematic for gameplay, like Mystic Mine I think was an example. Unless there's rare cases like that, or like a tier 0 deck that just like coin flips like auto win or something. Just let things have their time. 3 months is like fair. Like if there's a new deck that's really powerful, whether it's tier 0 or tier 1 or like whatever cool overpowered thing it does, it's like that's just part of the game. We just gotta adapt. And when it really becomes a problem is when something's just like been around for past its time. And I think that's what happened with Kashtira. It just kind of like it wasn't uniquely overpowered. It was actually one of the fairer best decks we've had in a while, because like the full end board could lose to just like one board breaker plenty of the time. So I don't think the deck certainly wasn't that like overpowered. It was just like the Rise were just so gimmicky. It was just that it was around for too long. They needed to ban a Rise Heart on the ban list before the one where they did, I think.
Yeah, we were too tired of a Rise Heart.
I remember at YCS Philly when they announced the ban list and we saw that it was limited to one. Like as soon as I finished looking through the ban list, I immediately was like, well, Cashier is still the best deck. I was very disappointed.
If you could pick a top 3 or top 5 players you would say have been the most influential to you, competitive or local, who would they be and what impact do they have on you?
That's a really good question. And yeah, there's like a lot of people I feel like I'd want to shout out. There were a couple of players who when I was little, I looked up to a lot on like the local level. My friend Randall, Igor, Tony, probably. If they ever see this, they'll know who they are. And then probably on like a national level, I used to always look up to, when I was a kid, Adam Korn. He was like the pro player in the game when I first started. He had like a ton of SJC tops, and like I think he won nationals in 2007. And then when I was like older, Patrick Hoban was a player who I like look up to a ton. Probably like now he's a friend of mine, but at the time he was like, he's one of the best players of all time. Probably like the only after maybe like Jesse. He did a lot to advance like the theory behind like deck building and strategy in the game in like the mid 2010s. He was like highly respected as the best of all time. For like now, yes, he's probably considered that, but Hoban had a big influence in the game. And then probably like, I mean, today there's like so many players who I look up to who I consider like, better than me, who I look up to, like Christian Urena, Cody Angeloff, another friend of mine who I look up to. I think he's really good. He doesn't play right now, but yeah. And then my friend, probably my friend Hani would probably have to get the shout out for like the biggest, like he's helped me progress in the game more than anyone else. Like he's always been supportive of me, and like we've been at the same team like for years. So probably he gets like the number 1 spot, and then my friend Brad gets like the number 2 spot. So yeah, I like that question. That was a good question.
Closing out, I want to take a quick moment to acknowledge all of your accomplishments. Most notably, being the first U.S. World Champion and doing so while remaining positive, outgoing, and inspiring the others. For me personally, it was how you thanked others for what you achieved while smiling, being humble the whole time. What advice would you give a Dragon Duelist or any player wanting to be more competitive who wants to aim for the same level of success and professionalism?
The main thing, just keep practicing. Practice as much as you can, and just keep at it. That's always my main piece of advice to players: is just test and practice hands-on as much as you can, and and keep at it. You'll keep improving. And then second, I always encourage players to just, just play with good sportsmanship, be respectful to the opponent, have a good game, and yeah, just be friendly, just be respectful and have good sportsmanship. So those are the big things.